Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahabushai, Bahasham, Rakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahabushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure to the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another video, and I'm going to start it off in Matthew chapter 24, verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. And these are the end time signs that Yahabushai, the Son of the Most High, whom people ignorantly refer to as so-called Jesus, told his disciples to look for in the last days, which we are currently living in, really the last seconds of the last days. And if you look at current events, all these things mentioned are either in the process of taking place or taking place as we speak. Actually, I'll read verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. And with the current state of things, from Ukraine to China and Taiwan to Iran, and Israel and the U.S., hey, wars and rumors of wars goes without saying. But as it said, there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. And what I'll be dealing with in this lesson is the famines. And I have two articles to show that, hey, food shortages are coming. Not just the third world countries, which people usually expect them to take place in, but first world nations as well, including the United States of America. And it's all judgments from Yahweh Bahasham Yahabushai for the wickedness you people have been committing out here. But the first article I'll be going to is on usatoday.com. Going to be a lot of hungry people. Food banks, farmers across U.S. decry federal cuts. By what? Doge. Hey, a lot of people are starting to feel the hurt from Trump's policies out here. And as other brothers and myself have been saying, Donald Trump could very well be that cruel Lord in Isaiah 19, verse 4, set over spiritual Egypt, the United States of America. The abrupt cancellation of government funding for programs to help food banks distribute healthy, which is questionable, local food is being felt across the country as some already strapped organizations turn to their local communities for help. In early March, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it was cutting more than $1 billion in funding for the local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement and the local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement programs for 2025. The money was designed to pay farmers to provide food to schools and food banks, giving a boost to local producers while giving fresh options to children and communities. Then, food banks were hit with another blow when they were informed that scheduled deliveries of food through the USDA's Emergency Food Assistance Program were being halted or cut back. The cuts come as President Donald Trump and Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency target a long list of government programs and federal jobs for sweeping cuts in recent months. The USDA told USA Today that the LFPA cuts were a return to long-term, fiscally responsible initiatives. And like, the brother Ariala in Dallas said in a video I saw a couple of months ago, hey, people can't eat politics. People can only eat sandwiches. Hey, you have people out here touting that Donald Trump and Doge initiatives are going to bring the country back on track. But for the majority of people, they don't care about words. They only care about filling their bellies and their children's bellies. And when things continue to deteriorate economically out here and people really feel that squeeze, hey, push comes to shove, people are going to be pushing out here, pushing against the government and pushing against their neighbors. Food producers and food banks that participated in the AXT programs say they will have less food to give to their communities, and rural communities will be hit the hardest because they depend the most on USDA-funded programs for the food distributed by food banks, said Vince Hall, Chief Government Relations Officer of the nonprofit Feeding America. And I've got a few food banks around where I live. And I've seen those lines, and those lines get long, leading around the corner, and people in cars waiting to get food. And since 2019 to 2021, a lot of people haven't recovered from that economic hit during that time. And with inflation rising, people are heavily relying on these food banks. People are desperate out here. And now with funding getting cut to them, the squeeze is just going to get that much harder. But as I said, with these cuts coming, those food banks are going to get emptier and emptier, which brings me to 2nd Esdras chapter 6 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to start at verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. And, talking about these farmers and their croplands, because, you sow seed. And, with the federal funding getting cut, that's just going to give that much more of a squeeze to these farmers out here to not have the sufficient amount of money to plant the sufficient amount of crops. And let's not even get into these adverse weather events that have been affecting farmers lately, creating less and less yields. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty, from these grocery store shelves to, as we're reading, these food bank store shelves. And the trumpet shall give a sound, which when every man heareth, they shall be suddenly afraid. Verse 24. At that time shall friends fight one against another like enemies, and the earth shall stand in fear with those that dwell therein. The springs of the fountains shall stand still, and in 3 hours they shall not run. And what's one of the main things that would cause so-called friends to fight one against another like enemies? Food shortages, famines, people worried about feeding themselves and their families. Which brings me to 2nd Esdras chapter 15, verse 19. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread, famines, food shortages, and for great tribulation. So we're clearly reading in the scriptures that these famines will take place. And what we're reading about in these articles are just the beginning stages of it. Back in Matthew chapter 24, verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. It's only going to get worse from here on out. And a lot of these food shortages and supply chain disruptions are being orchestrated by the elites to put that squeeze on you people. Because as Henry Kissinger famously said, if you want to control the people, control the food. With these things being manufactured out here, on top of natural events taking place, because both of them are ultimately controlled by the Lord, with these people being desperate to the point to where they're fighting their friends and breaking into their neighbors' houses with the sword or that gun to take their food because of the lack of bread. That allows the elites the perfect opportunity to bring in that order out of chaos, that solution. Hey, we got to reset the system. Hey, we've got everything you need. You just need to get this micro C-hip implant in you. which is the mark of the beast in Revelation 13, verses 16 to 18, just as those great famines in ancient Egypt caused the people to sell themselves unto Pharaoh. These famines coming to modern day spiritual Egypt are going to cause you people to sell yourselves to modern Pharaoh, Esau, Edom, and his great reset, his NW0. Food producers and food banks that participated in the AXT programs say they will have less food to give to their communities, and rural communities will be hit the hardest because they depend the most on USDA-funded programs for the food distributed by food banks, said Vince Hall, Chief Government Relations Officer of the nonprofit Feeding America. The reality is that the food banking system is stressed to the breaking point right now because we're seeing record high demand and diminishing resources, Hall told USA Today, and suddenly shall the full storehouses be found empty. Folks who came to us during the pestilence have found it impossible to ease out of the dependency on food banks because inflation has made so many of their monthly budget essentials more expensive than ever. Food banks turn to communities for donations without funds. The cuts have widespread impacts. In Iowa, about $11.3 million to buy food for school children and food banks was cut. In Arizona, about $21 million. Delaware programs are facing about $2 million in lost funding, and the list goes on. The Food Bank of Delaware found out the federal government was canceling deliveries of about 900,000 meals over the next few months with the halting of the Emergency Food Assistance Program, the Delaware News Journal, part of the USA Today network, reported. That program made up over 1/4 of the food that the bank expected to receive for the rest of the year. The stress level is going up. Ann Hayes, executive director of Gather Food Pantry in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, told the Portsmouth Herald, what I would say is the government is stepping back clearly, so we need the community to step up. So that's it with this article. But now I'm going to go to my next article on endtimeheadlines.org. Millions of bees have died this year in what may be the worst bee loss in recorded history. In a devastating blow to the U.S. beekeeping industry, millions of bees have died over the past 8 months, prompting experts to label this as potentially the worst bee loss in recorded history. The alarming scale of these deaths has raised urgent concerns about the future of pollination and food production. There shall be famines, with beekeepers and scientists scrambling to understand the causes behind this unprecedented crisis. Blake Shook, a prominent U.S. beekeeper, has been at the forefront of sounding the alarm. In an interview with CBS News on March 29, 2025, Shook described the situation as an unfolding disaster for the industry. The data is showing us this is the worst bee loss in recorded history, he said, noting that he has personally found tens of thousands of dead bees at his operations. Shook's sentiments were echoed in a report by Yahoo News on the same day, which highlighted the staggering losses reported by commercial beekeepers nationwide. One of Shook's colleagues, a beekeeper who began the winter with 20,000 beehives, is now left with fewer than 1,000, a loss of over 95% of their colonies. The scale of this die-off is not just a problem for beekeepers, it poses a significant threat to national food security. Bees are vital pollinators responsible for roughly 1/3 of the food consumed in the United States, including fruits, vegetables, and nuts. If this is a multi-year thing, it'll change the way we consume food in the United States, Shook warned in a CBS News report. He emphasized that an annual loss rate of 80% would render the beekeeping industry unsustainable, crippling the ability to pollinate crops at the scale required for current agricultural production. Suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. Beekeepers are taking a heavy hit out here due to this mysterious die-off of large numbers of bees. This is 2 Esdras chapter 15. I'm going to start at verse 10. Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. And that's speaking of you Israelites, or so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who have been led to the slaughter and continually are slaughtered in the United States of America, which is spiritual Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. America, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, saving his elect, the 1/3 out of America. But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. And whether it's naturally occurring or man-made, it is a plague ultimately from Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai that is smiting Egypt or America with a mass bee die-off, which is going to lead to what? Ramifications all throughout society, especially with pollination and food production. And as before, and I will destroy all the land thereof. Egypt shall mourn, and all the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and the punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. They that till the ground shall mourn, farmers, and including beekeepers as well, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting and the hail and with the fearful constellation. And later on in that article, it talks about, pesticides, adverse weather events, or whatever that could be what's leading to these massive bee die-offs. But it's Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai smiting Egypt with these plagues, not just physically, but financially as well, which brings me back to this first article, because it mentions, beekeepers being hit. Let me find it. Christy Allen, a Wisconsin beekeeper and owner of the Bee's Knees in Burnett County, told the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel she participated in the Wisconsin Local Food Purchase Assistance Program, which used the federal funding to pay local farmers to produce food for local pantries. Through it, she was able to provide about 3,000 pounds of honey to the St. Croix Valley Food Bank in the northwest Wisconsin in the past couple of years. She was able to hire another beekeeper to help her part-time, and she told the Journal Sentinel she might not be able to keep that employee on with the loss of income. Getting hit financially, and as we're reading in the second article, with mass bee die-offs. If it continues, they won't even be able to produce the honey, even if they've got the money. All they that till the ground shall mourn due to the blasting and the hail and the fearful constellations. Bees are vital pollinators responsible for roughly 1/3 of the food consumed in the United States, including fruits, vegetables, and nuts. If this is a multi-year thing, it'll change the way we consume food in the United States, Shook warned in the CBS News report. He emphasized that an annual loss rate of 80% would render the beekeeping industry unsustainable, crippling the ability to pollinate crops at the scale required for the current agricultural production. Beekeeping groups cited by CBS News estimated that 25% of commercial operations could shutter by the end of 2025, this year, if these losses persist. The ripple effects are already being felt, with Shook receiving an influx of distressed hives from beekeepers across the country desperate to salvage what remains of their colonies. Posts on X reflect growing public concern, with users like at Walks with Hawk calling for more people to take up beekeeping to address the crisis, while at Devious Franklin underscored the dire implications. No pollinators, not enough food. What is going on? Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh smiting Egypt with plagues to destroy the land thereof. But that's it with this article. Now I'm going to close it out in 2nd Esdras chapter 16. I'm going to start at verse 18. The beginning of sorrows. All these are just the beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come? Behold, famine and plague. And hey, bees dying off is a plague, and with bees dying off, that leads to what? Less pollination, less food production, more food shortages, famines, tribulation, and anguish are sent as scourges for amendment. But for all these things they shall not turn from their wickedness, nor be always mindful of the scourges. Hey, you have the prophets out here telling you why these things are happening and what's going to happen next. But what? Our people, which you Israelites or so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the only ones we're concerned with, are still not taking heed to this word. You're going to go down to FEMA. You're going to go down to Esau. You're going to go down to Egypt, as it says in Isaiah chapter 30, for help. And that's ultimately going to be your shame and destruction. Verse 21, behold, victuals shall be so good cheap upon the earth that they shall think themselves to be in good case. Though with the way things are looking, especially, with inflation and Trump's tariffs, these victuals being so good cheap are coming to its end. That they shall think themselves to be in good case, and even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great tribulation. For many of them that dwell upon the earth, many of them shall perish of famine, starving to death. And the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy. And so if you're not of that elect number, you may escape starving to death. You may escape your neighbor destroying your house with the force of the sword due to the lack of bread, but something else is going to get you. You're going to get killed in these race wars out here, civil unrest, martial law, these pestilences which are coming, you getting thrown into a concentration camp and getting tortured to death, getting drafted to go fight in World War III, or ultimately getting hit by a nuclear missile. But hey, that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of Esau, Edom. And hey, if we are of that elect number, these famines and food shortages are nothing we have to worry about, because as it says in Isaiah 68, my servants shall eat and drink. Hey, so stay strong and hey, keep pushing. But with that, I'm gonna say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.